Okay, so there's been, a lot of buzz around Solana lately. We're hearing these claims of lightning fast speed, super low fees, this whole thriving ecosystem popping up. It really sounds like it could be a major player, right? But, well, whenever something gets this much hype, makes these big claims, there's always more going on underneath.
Absolutely. Yeah, the hype is kind of impossible to ignore, and it naturally pulls in, both the builders wanting to use it and the people wanting to really scrutinize it to see what's real.
Right.
To really get a handle on Solana, you have to dig into the tech and face the challenges.
And that's exactly what we're doing today. For this deep dive, we've pulled together quite a stack of sources. We've got the original white paper, where they laid out the vision.
The foundational doc.
Yeah, and a guide on what it actually costs and takes to be a validator. Plus, it's tokenomics, supply data, an overview of the project's building there, info from a big financial publication, and, this is crucial, a really sharp critique from Cyber Capital. They pull absolutely no punches.
Yeah.
Serious allegations in there.
It's a good mix. Let's just look at it from, all sides. The tech dreams on paper, the practical stuff of running it, and, those very serious criticisms that have come up.
Right.
Our goal is to weave all this together so you can really understand what's going on.
Okay, let's unpack this then. So Solana was basically designed to tackle a really fundamental problem in these decentralized systems, right?
Yeah.
How do all these computers, spread all over the place, agree on the exact order and timing of things without one single trusted clock?
Yeah.
It's like synchronizing globally without a master clock.
Exactly. Traditional blockchains, they often struggle with that. No universal clock. Nodes spend a lot of time talking back and forth just to agree on order. It slows things down, creates bottlenecks. Solana's core idea, their proposed solution, it's pretty novel. Proof of history, POH.
Okay, POH. Now, this isn't the consensus part itself, right? It's more like creating a verifiable record before consensus.
That's it, exactly. It's about building this trustless timeline of events before they even need to agree on it.
So how does it build that timeline? What's the mechanism?
Well, it works by running a cryptographic function, like SHA-256 is the example they use, just over and over again sequentially.
Yeah.
Takes an input, runs the function, uses the output as the next input. Think of it like a continuous chain reaction of math.
And it just records points along that chain, like milestones.
Precisely. Every so often, it records the current hash output and, crucially, the count how many times the function has run since the last recorded point.
Right.
And because these hash functions are unpredictable, you can't guess the output without doing the work. Having, say, hash number 300 proves that real time must have passed to do those sequential calculations since hash 200.
Ah, okay. So it's creating a verifiable record of time passing. How do actual transactions get tied into this?
So data from a transaction, or usually just a hash of that data, gets mixed into the sequence at a specific point.
Mixed in?
Yeah. The person generating the sequence, the leader, includes that transaction hash, runs the function again. The resulting output hash then acts like a timestamp for that transaction data. It cryptographically guarantees the transaction existed before that point in the sequence was generated.
Got it.
It locks the order.
It's like embedding a hash of a photo into that running stream. Later, anyone can see, yep, that photo hash was definitely there at that point in time, proving it existed before the straw moved on.
Perfect analogy. And here's a key thing for Solana speed claims. Generating the sequence has to be sequential, one core. But verifying it, that can be done way, way faster.
How so?
You can split the sequence into chunks and check them all at the same time, in parallel, across lots of cores. Think GPUs.
Ah, okay.
That parallel verification is a big reason Solana validators can supposedly chew through huge amounts of history quickly.
And the white paper mentioned scaling this horizontally too, having multiple generators.
Yeah, they can have multiple POH generators running at once, and they kind of cross-reference or mix their states into each other's sequences now and then.
Okay.
This lets the whole system handle more events, boosts throughput, but there's a trade-off.
Always a trade-off.
Right. You lose a tiny bit of that perfect time accuracy between events from different generators because of network lag. And, well, if one generator goes down, it can affect availability.
Okay, but how does the network stop the person running the POH sequence from just messing with it?
Yeah.
Faking the timeline or shuffling transactions?
Good question. That's where users and the other validators come in. When you send a transaction, you're supposed to include the last valid POH hash you saw.
Wow.
So if a transaction shows up referencing some hash that isn't actually in the sequence the network is building, validators just reject it. Invalid. Plus, user signatures on the transactions themselves add another layer.
Got it. So POH gives you the clock, the timeline. But that's just the record. The network still needs to agree on which timeline is the right one and who gets to generate the next piece. That's where proof of stake comes in.
Exactly. POH is the history book, proof of stake is the committee that votes on the book and picks the next historian, the leader.
So how does that POS voting work on Solana?
Okay, so validators lock up SOL tokens. That's their bond, their stake. The chosen leader generates the POH sequence, processes transactions for their turn, and then publishes a signed snapshot of the network state.
Right.
Other validators then check this snapshot and publish their own signed verification. That's their yes vote for that piece of history and the resulting state.
And consensus is reached when enough yes votes come in.
Yep. Needs a supermajority specifically. 2/3 of the validators weighted by their stake to vote for that sequence and state for it to be considered final.
And if the leader messes up or goes offline?
Then the network holds an election. A new leader is chosen, usually the validator group with the most voting power based on stake.
And if someone tries to cheat the system, like voting on two different histories?
That's slashing. If a validator is caught voting on conflicting chains, someone can publish proof and boom, a chunk of their staked SOL gets destroyed. Gone.
Ouch.
Same penalty if they vote for an invalid state that the leader tried to sneak in. Keeps people honest, theoretically.
The white paper also mentioned something interesting, prioritizing consistency over availability if the network splits, using POH time.
Yeah, that's a key design choice. If the network gets partitioned, validators can't talk to each other, the system is designed to make sure everyone eventually agrees on the exact same history based on that POH timeline, even if it means part of the network might be unavailable for a bit.
How does that work practically?
There's this dynamic unstaking thing. If most validators are online and voting, you can get your stake back relatively quickly. But if the network is badly split, say less than half are present in your partition, unstaking becomes super slow.
So it encourages people to stick with the main consistent chain.
Exactly. Helps the bigger partition recover faster. The idea is to really protect the integrity of that historical record.
Makes sense.
And they note that trying to fake a valid history from the past is, incredibly difficult. You'd need more computing power than the whole network, and it would take ages.
Okay, so the whole driving force behind Solana is performance, right? Massive transaction speeds, low costs, all these bits, POH, POS, they're all meant to serve that goal.
That's the big promise. High speeds through POH as the clock, optimized POS for consensus, plus a bunch of other architectural pieces designed to cut out the usual blockchain waiting times.
They gave them those catchy names too, didn't they? Gulfstream, Tower BFT, Sealevel, Turbine.
Yeah, Gulfstream for handling incoming transactions without a big waiting pool, Tower BFT for faster consensus, Sealevel lets smart contracts run side by side, and Turbine helps spread data quickly. They definitely went for memorable branding. And the white paper, it actually does the math. Theoretically, on a 1 gigabit per second network, they calculated a potential max throughput of, get this, 710,000 transactions per second.
Wow, 710,000, that's huge. How do smart contracts fit into that kind of speed?
Yeah, a big part of that is how they handle smart contracts. They use something called eBPF bytecode. It's known for being fast and safe, originally from operating systems.
Right.
This lets them potentially use hardware like GPUs and critically run compatible smart contract functions in parallel. If they don't touch the same data, they can run at the same time. Batching those up is key to hitting high numbers with dApps.
And proof of replication? POREP. Is that consensus too?
No, the sources are clear on this. POREP in Solana is just about ensuring data storage over the long term. It makes storage providers prove they actually have the history. Uses parallel processing for verification too, but it's about storage, not agreement on the next block.
Okay, so with that kind of speed potential and low-cost aim, it's maybe not surprising Solana's attracted so many projects, right? Even when the market's been rough.
Yeah.
So sources talk about a busy ecosystem.
Oh yeah, it's definitely become a hub. DeFi, NFTs, gaming especially.
Yeah.
The pitch is clear. High speed, low fees. That enables stuff that's just too slow or expensive on other chains.
Can you give some examples from the sources?
Yeah.
Why did specific projects choose Solana?
Sure, like Star Atlas, that super ambitious space MMO game using Unreal Engine 5.
Right, heard of that one?
Needs tons of fast, cheap transactions for everything. NFT items, player actions. Solana's speed promise is perfect for that kind of complexity. Or Stepien, the move-to-earn fitness app. Millions of users, tiny transactions constantly need speed and low cost to work at scale.
Makes sense. What about the finance side?
You've got Mango Markets, a trading platform. For
Yeah.
traders doing lots of cross-margin stuff, high performance and low fees are absolutely critical. Selenium, another one, it's a launch pad for new projects doing IDOs again, needs to be fast and cheap.
And NFTs in general.
Yeah, generally Solana became really popular for NFTs, like with Magic Eden Marketplace, partly because minting and trading was just so much cheaper than on, say, Ethereum early on,
Yeah.
made it more accessible.
There was also mention of privacy features.
They added confidential transfers. That could be a big deal for businesses or institutions using the chain who need privacy for their transactions.
Okay. Now, we have to switch gears a bit because one of our sources, that Cyber Capital critique, paints a very different picture. Some really strong claims, serious allegations.
Yeah, this source basically argues that a lot of what Solana presents as innovation is actually reckless design or even deceptive. It's important we cover their claims from the source, but they're out there and significant.
A huge point they make is about reliability, the network going down.
Oh, yeah, they hit that hard, frequent downtime. The source claims, what was it, 9, maybe 12 outages in 2022?
Wow.
And that big one in Feb 2023, over 19 hours. They contrast it starkly with Bitcoin and Ethereum, which they say have never gone down like that. And they blame Solana's design choices, prioritizing raw speed over being robust.
And then the allegations about faking metrics, especially transactions per second, TPS.
This is maybe the core of their critique. They allege Solana massively inflates its TPS numbers by counting internal network messages like validator votes as if they were user transactions.
So the big number isn't really user activity.
That's what they claim. They show charts suggesting actual user transactions are just a tiny sliver of the reported TPS. And they argue this isn't just misleading, it forces validators to buy incredibly expensive hardware just to handle all those consensus messages, making it hard to profit, pushing towards centralization, all for a vanity metric.
They mentioned a specific instance too, right? Claiming high TPS during an outage?
Yes, September 4th, 2021. Lots of transactions failing, but the official Solana status Twitter apparently claimed 400K TPS. The critique says that's just false failed transactions shouldn't count, and that actual on-chain data showed way lower successful TPS.
What about TVL, total value locked in DeFi?
Another bombshell allegation. They cite a CoinDesk piece from August 22 claiming it was basically an open secret that maybe 70% or more of Solana's peak $10 billion TVL was faked.
Faked.
Allegedly by just 2 developers counting the same assets over and over again across different protocols they controlled. Double, triple, quadruple counting.
And issues with disclosing the token supply early on.
Yeah, that's another claim. Back near launch, the source says Solana Labs wasn't upfront about the circulating supply until someone found 13 million unlocked tokens in a wallet.
Oof.
According to the source, Solana Labs admitted to 11 million loaned to a market maker, promised to burn them. But the source implies that promise maybe wasn't kept immediately or was repeated, suggesting delays.
These are really serious accusations. It sounds like the source sees a pattern.
That's exactly how they frame it. Not just mistakes, but a pattern. And they extend it to the tech design, too. POH leader predictability, how Turbine groups validators. They argue these aren't smart trade-offs, they're dangerous ones.
Like yours how?
They claim it makes the network vulnerable. Easier to DDoS leaders, maybe even pull off a 51% attack with less than 51% stake, potentially censor transactions by targeting specific validator groups. They call them reckless shortcuts for speed.
And there was that big wallet hack, too.
Right. August 2022, over 8,000 users' keys compromised. While it was traced to a third-party wallet software flaw, the critique uses it as an example of what they call Solana's reckless culture, comparing it negatively to security practices around keys and closed-source software in the ETH-BTC worlds. They even point to a specific GitHub security issue left open for over a year as evidence.
Wow. And they even criticized the Solana phone?
Yeah, they see it as a huge misstep. Why build a phone, they ask, when the core blockchain has stability issues? They call it unethical use of resources, arguing crypto needs better software on existing phones, not new hardware. They bring up past failed crypto phones and links to the failed Essential Phone team.
So pulling it all together, this critique basically says Solana isn't innovation, it's recklessness.
That's the harsh conclusion, yeah. They argue Solana chased investors and hype with deception and technobabble, taking dangerous shortcuts for scalability instead of using sounder methods like sharding or L2s that prioritize decentralization. They literally list 5 points summarizing the alleged bad behavior: lying about supply, false TPS, deceptive design inflating metrics, fake TVL, dangerous trade-offs. pretty damning stuff.
Okay, let's take those criticisms, especially about cost and centralization, and
And
look at our source about actually running a validator. What's the reality on the ground?
right, let's connect the critique to the practicalities. Running a Solana validator based on this guide is definitely a serious commitment. It's not cheap or easy. The hardware needs are pretty intense.
Like what?
High-end CPU, tons of fast RAM. They recommend 384 GB of DDR5 or more, and multiple fast enterprise-grade SSDs.
What's the ballpark cost for just getting that gear and set up?
The estimates in the source are like $5,000 to $10,000 for the hardware if you run it yourself. Then another $2,500 to $4,000 maybe for initial setup costs. And that's before you even buy the SOL you need to stake.
And ongoing costs too, right? Monthly bills.
Yep. If you run it at home, maybe $100 to $300 a month for power, which can be a lot for beefy hardware and good internet. If you use cloud hosting, that jumps way up, like $500 to $1,500 a month.
Okay, so hardware, setup, monthly running costs,
Mhm.
and then the stake itself. You need SOL.
Correct. There isn't a strict minimum, but the guide suggests around 100 SOL is needed to be competitive to attract stake delegations from others, which is how you really earn.
And 100 SOL, depending on the price.
Could be a lot. One source mentioned a figure around $23,700, but obviously that fluctuates wildly with the market. But yeah, we're talking potentially thousands, maybe tens of thousands of dollars just for the initial stake to be competitive.
So when that critique talks about validation being expensive and leading to centralization, these numbers definitely show a high barrier to entry.
Absolutely. The hardware cost, the running cost, the significant stake needed it makes it much harder for just anyone or a small group to jump in compared to some other networks. It does lend weight to that argument that the design, intended or not, could centralize control among those who can afford it.
Is there anything acting as a counterweight to that? Anything promoting decentralization?
Well, the tokenomics source does mention the Solana Foundation. They hold a lot of SOL and apparently delegate big chunks of it to over 2,000 different validators. The stated goal is to help spread out the voting power and support decentralization.
But the validator guide mentions other challenges too, beyond just money.
Oh, yeah. There's the sheer technical complexity, setting up, monitoring, updating constantly. Network volatility is a big one. Your SOL stake and rewards can swing wildly in value. And security is huge, protecting against attacks, managing those validator keys safely, which, as the critique pointed out with the wallet hack, has been an issue in the ecosystem.
Okay, so Solana, clearly ambitious tech, a buzzing ecosystem built on speed claims, but also facing really significant public criticisms about stability, transparency, design choices, and the real costs of participation. It's complex.
That really sums it up. The Forbes source kind of echoes this, noting the journey has had bumps like outages and these ongoing centralization debates. It's growing, evolving, but maybe not fully mature yet.
What's the focus going forward, according to what we've read?
Seems to be continued focus on stability and performance as usage grows. Success, as Forbes notes, likely depends on regular upgrades, listening to the community, building partnerships.
So for someone listening, thinking about Solana, what's the takeaway?
Well, Forbes suggests if you're into DeFi, NFTs, high-speed stuff, it might be worth looking into. But, and this is the big but, they stress you absolutely need to understand both the potential upsides and those significant risks before jumping in.
Right. This deep dive, it's really taken us through a lot. The core innovation claim with proof of history, the architecture built for speed, the ecosystem using it, the real costs for validators, and then slamming into those heavy critiques about reliability, honesty, and design flaws.
Yeah, we've seen the vision for this super fast blockchain side by side with a history of outages and really pointed questions about transparency and just how decentralized it truly is. It's definitely not simple.
And why does this matter to you listening? Well, understanding the tech, the intended trade-offs, seeing the real costs, hearing the specific criticisms, it lets you look past the hype, right? You can form a more nuanced view, evaluate what's really being built, think about the challenges of scaling decentralized systems, and appreciate how important things like transparency and integrity are in this space.
It forces you to weigh the promise against the actual performance and the critiques leveled against it.
Exactly. So based on everything we've uncovered today, from those mind-bending theoretical speeds promised by its clock mechanism to the detailed accounts of network failures and these allegations of misrepresentation, maybe we're left with a pretty crucial question to think about. In this relentless race for performance, for speed above all else, what fundamental principles like decentralization, like trust, might be getting bent or even broken along the way?